Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on this episode of Early Access review, which is not really an early access because should be on the launch date itself, we are going to be taking a look at Saber, right? Our latest upcoming Wind Destruction 5-star, which is going to be our first limited collaboration unit. Perhaps the most hyped banner in honkaistarrail history, featuring the first ever collaboration with the Fate franchise, Saber is going to be our key unit today, and shortly after, Archer's Guide is also going to be released. As a whole, Saber's kit is pretty simplistic, making it easy to understand and use for any players, whether old or new in HSR. But because of her unique core resonance mechanic, she easily obtains the 2-turn ultimate despite a massive 360 energy cost, on top of having a 1380% multiplier. Now she functions very well with our old version 2 teammates of Sunday, Robin, and Huan, just like Leia, while working well with others such as Tribi, RMC, and even Ranmei. Now jumping into the character kit, in a sense, Saber's kit is somewhat a little bit similar to Finon and other traditional hyper carries where you want to provide her with action value advance, namely via Sunday or Bronya or even RMC, and this is to allow the fastest core resonance generation, which can be broken down into the following, which is going to be skill, which gives you a 3, any allies ultimate gives you a 3, as well as enhanced base attack giving you 2. This core resonance mechanic is going to be seen from the green icon from the silver here, which essentially translates into the grey bar, or the amount of energy that Saber can restore after consuming core resonance, as well as the increased 14% multiplier per stack, but the multiplier is actually very small, right? So this core resonance, there is no limit, and the moment Saber can hit the maximum energy after consuming core resonance via skill, it will automatically trigger, filling the ultimate to hold +1 skill point and giving her the extra turn. This mechanic is actually very decent chunk of depth involved, and players could play around with this, such as intentionally holding off her skill with an enhanced basic attack to synchronize with your other unit's ultimate for more stack generations, which could lead to some very fun interactions, right? And as you can see over here, this kit has a very large emphasis on getting Saber's ultimate damage, which has the highest damage multiplier in the entire game of 1380%, yes, even outscaling Finon's disregarding the tracers, right? And as such, if players can ensure Saber has plenty of action values as well as energy regeneration, her damage will easily compete with any version 3 team comp. So jumping into the basic attack or the enhanced basic attack, you can pretty much ignore the basic attack, but the enhanced basic attack has a ton of value. So on top of having a very decent 300/370% multiplier for 2 or 1 target, it also grants 2 core resonance, 1 skill point, as well as 30 energy. Yes, this enhanced basic actually does generate you 1 skill point. So note that once this enhanced basic is unlocked, you have to use this enhanced basic, meaning you cannot use your normal skill. Sometimes this might be a bad thing because technically a skill gives you 3 core resonance instead of 2, but in other times you might want to intentionally use this so that you can store out your skill for an even longer, such that you can build up this core resonance to an even higher amount, where you can synchronize something like a double ultimate back to back, right? So one thing you can do is to basically abuse this to infinitely stack on core resonance to as high as possible, eventually linking up with units such as Sunday as well as Huo, a very interesting combination. Then jumping into the skill itself, you will essentially use this skill to generate core resonance every single turn, a little bit like Finon as well as Acheron's skill themselves. Multipliers can go up to 14% per stack of core resonance, so at 10 stacks it's going to be 140% multiplier, 20 stacks at 280, etc. But generally speaking, the damage coming from this skill is not going to be as crazy, not even anywhere as close to the damage you're going to be receiving from the ultimate, right? So for the grey energy bar, so you can see over here the wording of if energy can be regenerated to full, that is basically where the grey energy bar comes from. So the trigger condition is once enough core resonance can be consumed to hit the 360 energy, Saber will automatically use up the core resonance for the energy regeneration. So the grey energy bar, it will disappear, and the multiplier, it will also increase as well, right? So when she's using this to get the energy for the ultimate, she will also not generate any core resonance in this skill. Keep in mind, this grey energy, it is fixed. It is not going to be affected by any energy drain, such as a Ventrine's dice attack, right? You can only drain your normal energy and not your grey energy. Now, extremely important, because of the trace Knight of a Dragon, you can actually accidentally waste Saber's action value advance because of this grey energy. Because this free turn, it will be triggered the moment Saber gains enough for the ultimate, assuming that you can use a skill, right? So if you're under the enhanced basic attack mode where you cannot use a skill, then it's okay. But if you can use a skill, the moment you get 360 energy, it will instantly grant her the extra turn as well as the +1 skill point. Now this is very notable with Sunday, so let's just say it's Saber's turn and she can get full energy for her ultimate either with a Sunday ultimate or a Saber skill, always prioritize using Saber's skill first, or even Saber's basic attack to get the extra turn immediately, so they can save Sunday's ultimate for the next Saber ultimate, taking priority even over the buffs for the Sunday ultimate for their one instance of damage, right? Now keep in mind, this energy can also be activated from enemies as well. So if you're going to be getting hit, you can hit the 360 energy, which will instantly let Saber get the extra turn again. However, after Saber uses her ultimate, you can only use her enhanced basic attack. So at this point, you will not activate this extra turn until you let go of this enhanced basic attack, right? So that is pretty much it for the skill. And then jumping into the ultimate, okay, editor, roll credits. Compared to Vinon, this was a really a lot easier for me as well as my editors, because it's such a simple design. Just one big, massive chunk of damage with a base 280% to all targets, followed by a 10 times 110% multiplier to one random target. A little bit similar to the Finon's bounce skill from his enhanced skill, while enhancing her next basic as explained earlier. Now as of now, no DPS can match this burst aside from Fei Xiao's double ultimate at 1400 multiplier. So it's kind of funny that both of the basically highest damage in the entire game, they are both coming from the wind element, right? Wait, chat. This Fei Xiao might be cooking. Double out. Double out. Each additional bounce, it also deals the additional toughness bar damage, making her a potentially insane DPS for Epoch Shadows, given the ultimate cost, as well as sometimes you get the energy regeneration as well, right? And since this is a bounce, it would also suffer from innate weaknesses, such as from Firemon's enhanced skill, where if there are too many different targets, the damage against the main target, it will drop off considerably, which you're gonna notice, especially against enemies such as, for example, True Stick, right? So that is that for the ultimate. And jumping into the talent, which is gonna be the whole core resistance mechanic, I sort of touched on this at the very start. So aside from this, a 60% damage buff, your entire team's ultimate can also give you 3 stacks of core resistance, which means your fast ultimate rotations for your support, such as for example Tribi or even Silver Wolf, it can also indirectly improve Saber's energy regeneration. In a sense, because of this talent, her skill, instead of generating 30 energy, is actually generating 54 energy, because 3 stacks would be gained from the core resistance, which translates into 24 at a fixed 8 energy each. Now note that this energy is not instantly gained, but it is converted into the grey energy portion, which eventually you can consume whenever you want to use her next skill, right? So that is pretty much it for the talent. And lastly, for the technique, very straightforward. Just activate this for the 35% attack buff as well as the core resistance. This is not a damaging technique, so you can actually stack this on with other DPSs. For example, if you want to use her with Silver Wolf, right? So going into the major traces, the Crown of Star is basically a massive 82% crit damage buff, and I would say it's more or less permanent because you should be using a skill pretty much every single turn. And then for the Blessing of the Lake, it is more or less a comfort running energy regenerations such as Sunday and Huo, while not worrying about overcapping on your total energy. You can see how much energy is going to be in excess from this battery symbol over here, updated whenever the excess energy is going to be restored, all the way up to 120, right? And lastly, the Knight of the Dragon is going to be what I mentioned just now. Combined with the Crown of Star, this will give a Saber a baseline of 20% crit rate and 82% crit damage, which is very nice for just a very simplistic kit itself, right? The Mana Burst mechanic is the mechanic that I mentioned, the additional skill point as well as the extra turn. It will take a turn first for Saber if her skill can give you enough energy for the ultimate, so that she can get the extra turn before external energy sources such as Sunday as well as Huo, as well as enemy interactions from getting hit. Now you don't have to worry about this overflow because of the Blessing of the Lake, because you basically get back all of your energy whenever you get back any access up to 120, right? And again, this will not activate if you are in the enhanced basic state after casting your ultimate. And jumping to the minor tracers, is going to be 12% crit rate, 22.4% wind damage, as well as 10% HP. So from everything at a baseline, Saber would need a little bit more help on the crit rate, because her teammates as well as her kit massively buffs her crit damage, especially if you do not use Sunday. And for skill leveling priority, ultimate over skill over talent over basic, pretty much on that level, every single one of them as a DPS. Now jumping into the next topic, which is essentially how strong is Saber? Although this is a very generic question, I would say most players will probably bring this up, especially for a collab unit, and even more so that collab unit is a DPS amongst the different DPSs that we already have gotten in this version update alone, on top of the free DPS Archer. So naturally, people who already want to pull Saber due to the collab as well as waifu reasons, it will pull for Saber regardless, and while people who have no interest in fake collaborations probably wouldn't get another DPS with our roster, not after the influx of so many different DPSs in version 3. This brings us to the point of how does Saber fare with the rest of the DPS classes, especially in version 3 as of this moment. So I basically tested out the following on the standard team of E0, S1, Sunday, Saber, and Huo, as well as the E1 Bubbin, and this will be tested on Memory of Chaos, Pure Vision, and Epoch Shadows for all 3 endgame content, first half and second half. So as you can see from this table over here, this is going to be the reference of our performance. For Memory of Chaos, as a general tip, you can try stacking on Saber's ultimate energy and core resonance by stalling out this core resonance skill with using enhanced base attack. Combining this with Huo and Sunday, we were able to get a back-to-back Saber double ultimate for the most satisfying burst I've ever seen in honkaistarrail. Unfortunately, the downside is that you do lose one core from using enhanced basic instead of skill, so in the long run, you will lose more great energy, but it is a pretty good tech for fast kills, right? And then for the Savrok side, I would say this is going to be quite weak to action value delay from Savrok's beam attack, because if it hits Saber, it will greatly reduce our damage since we missed an entire turn, otherwise we would have gotten from Saber into Sunday into Saber, right? The good side is that the AoE attacks from the Wolf and the missiles, or any sort of AoE attacks where you're going to be saving from the endgame content, it is going to be very, very beneficial to this entire team comp of Saber, Robin, Sunday, and Hue because of the high amount of energy generated for the entire team. If the hand grabs Saber, which happened to one of my one cycle runs, simply use Sunday to push up Hue and try to break the hand from there. Now, do only aim the main body, or which pretty much going to be the boss of Savrok, instead of the elites as per all destruction DPSs. For the Avenging side, I was actually extremely surprised that this team was able to pull off a one cycle clear, albeit it was all the way at the very, very last action and ultimate from Saber. The Dice Energy Gamble have a huge RNG with Sunday and Huo, and both of them actually somehow managed to clear the check because the dice rolled to 6, right? Otherwise, it would have been easily a 2 cycle over here. But despite being an off-element DPS, it is quite satisfying to see a 770,000 Saber ultimate, because all of the bounces from Saber's ultimate, it is only focusing on Avenging as a single target, because the ultimate is more or less going to be a bounce skill, and she also easily gains maximum dice because of the skill or the enhanced basic, which is going to be attacking all 4 dice simultaneously, right? I also tried Saber on the current Memory of Chaos 12, which is going to be True Sting as well as Hule, which came out to a 3 cycle and 1 cycle respectively. The first wave's horse prevented us from getting a 0 cycle run with current build, leading to the eventual 2 cycle of being off element. Now, not having access to the bonus mechanics like Avenging dice, it also hindered our off element run itself. Easily dispatched Hule due to its high frequency of hits, and the key question is basically, can Huo sustain the damage, which can be a little bit scary, and my Robin actually came close to death while aiming for a pretty decent clear. So that is gonna be her performance in Memory of Chaos. And then for Pure Vision, it was actually surprisingly decent for Saber due to the amount of times that we were getting hit from the mobs. If not for full auto, I think that Saber could have probably gotten a 40,000 clear, if not for some of Saber's wasted actions, considering that for our Japar side, it is not even weak to the wind element, right? Now, that being said, we do have an E1 Bubbin, so definitely take that with a pinch of salt. Her biggest issue for Saber is that with Wave 1, it takes 1 cycle for both halves for on and off element. Now, once you get to Wave 2 and Wave 3, the ultimate really does an absolutely ridiculous amount of damage to the boss HP, and for the amount of energy that you'll be getting from the hits, it helps our entire team to cycle even faster. So for Wave 2, a single ultimate can easily deal 40% of the boss's max HP, and for Wave 3, it's roughly around 16%, right? So a very, very substantial damage output, and I can see 3B as a potential Robin replacement for more AoE follow-up attacks as well as the Dance usage. And then for lastly, Epoch Shadows. Generally, the most important thing is just play Saber on element against Epoch Shadows, and it will drastically improve her performance. If you really have no choice, you could consider running Silver Wolf as a replacement just to get Saber to break the toughness bar so that the ultimate can replenish based on this Epoch Shadow buff. Now, I would say that because Saber's ultimate deals such a tremendous amount of taskbar damage, it is absolutely pivotal to always make sure that the enemy is going to be weak to the wind element, right? So for the Flame Reaver side, he actually has 2 phases within each phase. So he's sort of like 2 2 phase in phase 1 and then 2 phase in phase 2. The first phase is pretty okay, which is basically the normal Memory of Chaos Flame Reaver summons, and by breaking the clones, you can also instantly break his first toughness bar. The second phase is where the issue really begins, because we are completely off element. Raw damage from the ultimate is the only way we can actually get us to the next phase itself, and either by dealing toughness bar damage from the clones or directly get Flame Reaver, and we had to take 3 full Flame Reaver clone rotations, which is the second phase, to break this toughness bar at 1556 action value. And since each time we clear a clone is a little bit less than half, we do need 3 full rotations from the second clone summons, because he's basically invincible and you basically have to kill all of his clones in order to get to Flame Reaver itself, right? But despite all that, we still managed to get out a clear of 3145, which is not too bad considering how anti-synergistic Saber was with Flame Reaver. But on the other hand, against Doomsday Beast, this was absolute cinema, because we actually got our first break at 1898 and then second break at 1787, which we instantly one-shotted for a 3787 clear on full auto. Not too much to say, you basically break the arms, break the body, and then you slam your Excalibur for absolutely insane amounts of damage. So very satisfied with the performance in this overall case, right? So with that, let's just jump into my overall thoughts for Saber's endgame performance. And as a whole, I actually don't think Saber really has a glaring weakness in the endgame modes that we see her in as of now. The most problematic ones were the off-element Japart Pure Fiction, as well as notably the Flame Reaver Epoch Shadows. But for every on-element stage, Saber will easily dispatch of them within the number of cycles or the scores given, even if we were to take away the E1 Robin. Overall, I am very satisfied with her performances as a collab unit, capable of being at the bare minimum in similar strength as our version 3 DPS while running a version 2 team. On top of that, she's also not overly broken, which outscales the version 3 DPS running a version 3 team. That being said, my biggest concern will have to do with the enemies that don't hit Saber's team as frequently, which will lead to an energy downtime, which can in turn lead to our entire rotations being a little bit slower. Kit-wise, Saber is also a multiplier unit, which means that as long as our ultimate multipliers are strong enough to, let's just say for example, break a phase in 1 or 2 ultimates, she can clear the stage extremely quickly. And as enemies get stronger or more mechanics gets introduced to force a team comps interaction instead of just, slam your Excalibur and dealing raw damage, for example against, let's just say, Pollux, it will inevitably lead to a performance decrease for this unit, right? So that is pretty much it, and with that we can finally jump on to the build itself, first of which being the Light Cone. Now for Saber's Light Cone, this S1 is the only Destruction Light Cone that features the energy regeneration mechanic, tying perfectly with Saber herself, right? So increase cringe by 36%, increase attack, increase your max energy regeneration by 10%. It is going to be a perfect fit for Saber, not really for the damage per ultimate, but for the 10% max energy regeneration, which is pretty much equivalent to 36 energy per ultimate, with on top of a 80% attack buff as well as a faster rotation, which is pretty much equivalent to 1 extra skill. This would drastically improve the overall pace in which Saber can use Excalibur. For substitutes for this signature Light Cone, you can include the classic Destruction Light Cone 4 of an Aeon, or the brand new Battle Pass Light Cone to increase our crit rate, skill, and ultimate damage, which would outscale Aeon with higher super inquisitions, right? The energy rotation, you can improve this with Sunday and Huo, but for players without them, you might find issues getting Excalibur with a higher frequency due to this 360 energy cost, right? And even with Sunday and Huo, the rotation can still improve further because we have an excess of 120 energy cap, making sure there's minimal wastage over here, right? Then jumping into the relics, very similar to Final, the only changes being Salsodo over Arcadia. Majority of all of Saber's damage, more than 80% excluding your allies, it would be coming from the ultimate, so that would be our main focus. So for the main stats, body crit over crit damage, you can run either speed or attack boost, and then for the Planar Sphere, win over attack percentage drop, as well as a crit rate substats, right? Crit rate or crit damage subset. So general build for most crit DPSs, you can opt for attack percentage boost if you are going to be using with Sparkle, or if you are able to get enough speed subs due to outspeeding Sunday, right? The energy regeneration for our core resistance is going to be fixed at 8 per stack, so it is unaffected by energy regeneration, just all in attack percentage. The crit rate is going to be more preferred because she has a built-in 82% crit damage, as well as Sunday's buffs on top of her S1, but if your crit rate can somehow still hit 80% with a Sunday while on crit damage chest, then feel free to go for that as well. Now keep in mind, between wind damage and attack, Saber has a built-in 60% damage boost on top of a 22.4% damage boost. But depending on her teammates, the differences will lean towards whichever side she is lacking on in forms of damage or attack percentage. Sunday will give you damage, while Robin and Huohuo will give attack percent. And on top of that, your Wave Strider, Luxaka, S1 and Technique, it can all give you additional attack percentage buffs. So in the end, it was very low differences from what I've seen in both damages, with wind percentage slightly underperforming while having one less crit damage roll for 99.8% of attacks value. And this was, however, before Robin and Huohuo's ultimate. So after Robin and Huohuo's ultimate, it will definitely lean more towards the favor of wind damage sphere again. So for 679,000 damage versus 675,000 damage, very minor differences, right? And then lastly, for the set bonuses, 4-piece Wave Strider, best in slot, perfect synergy for the crit damage and a 48% attack buff. You can consider running the 4-piece Scholar for 8% crit rate and 20% ultimate damage, but the values are going to be lower, and Saber's skill is actually not going to be where majority of the damage is going to be coming from, right? South Soda for the 2-piece is definitely going to be her best in slot because it is the only ultimate damage buffer while offering crit rate, which is what Saber can use as well, right? Then jumping into the Eidolon sections, Saber's Eidolons are actually pretty alright and nothing too crazy. For the E1, it is a very nice buff of 60% ultimate damage while greatly improving our core resonance generation by 1 stack. The E1 does ensure you can hit 62 energy instead of 54 energy per skill considering the core resonance, while basic attack can also add on 1 additional stack, which we can sometimes use if we want to intentionally save our core resistance. Then jumping into the E2, I would say this is basically up to a 15% defense ignore and improves the multiplier for our skill, consuming core resistance from 40% multiplier to 21% multiplier, which is basically a 33% buff for this, right? Unfortunately, because Saber's damage is majority of the time coming from the ultimate, and her teammates doesn't really have that much access to defense rate unless you want to run this with Silver Wolf, this E2 is pretty okay, mediocre compared to the other powerful E2s, for example, Finon as well as Cassius, right? For Saber's E4, this E4 is actually really nice, more impactful than the E2 in my opinion, building up to 20% res pen, which means even more impact while being off element, and essentially can fight against this 20% win res enemies, right? And this also stacks on very nicely with E1 Robin as well as E1 Trippy. And lastly, for the E6, I would say this is, basically if you want her to be law accurate, right? Combining this with E4, this is going to be 40% res pen, which means that she basically ignores all weaknesses, because enemies in this game only go up to 40% res as of now anyways, although the toughness bar will still exist for you. The 300 energy regen once every 3 ultimates is absolutely insane, which basically if you combine it with the E1 as well as the fast energy regeneration, Saber can let go of this Excalibur almost every other turn, which is just, absolute cinema, right? So at the end of the day, between E1 and S1 for those looking for vertical investments, I would highly recommend the S1 over the E1 because for cost reasons aside, because S1 is already cheaper, the energy regeneration for S1 is simply more than E1 because 10% of the ultimate is 36 energy, which is directly converted into 4.5 cores, right? Meaning it would have taken Saber almost 5 turns for the E1 to match the energy regeneration for the S1. Now, the E1 included core resonance buff from the allies as well, then this is going to be a lot more competitive. Now, the E2 is also nothing too crazy, so getting E0 S1 is going to be a very good starting point for most players. And now, finally, we have come to the final segment, and that is going to be Saber's team comps, right? I've had most of my testing done with Sunday, Robin, and Huohuo because this team just feels so nice to play with one another, giving her another use for your older version 2 teams while not competing with your version 3 teams such as Tribi and Hyacinth, although they certainly can work as well. So below are some of the performances I found with MOC 12 Savrok and my experiences playing with them, right? So we have a Robin Sunday Huohuo for the pure version 2, Tribi Sunday Hyacinth for, basically the wheelchair team, Tribi RMC Hyacinth for pure version 3, and lastly RMC Teaming Gallagher for a all 4-star team. Overall, I would say that the team that surprised me the most, it was ironically the full 4-star team capable of achieving a 2-cycle clear into Savrok. Basically all 4 stars, right? For Team Win, RMC, and Gallagher, it was actually a lot more fluid than I expected because all 3 of them have relatively fast ultimates, which indirectly boost Saber's ultimate energy as well from core resistance. Your Team Win will buff up Saber with Dance, while RMC will spam her skill to provide faster energy as well as charge for Mimi's extra turn. Now, do try to time this Mimi's extra turn correctly and not waste a Saber bonus turn, ideally right before Saber takes an action herself, right? Gallagher's ultimate also provides a very nice heal steel and toughness power damage, which also help with breaking side rods as soon as possible. And as such, brand new players just starting out Honkai Star with no other 5 stars, you don't really have to worry that much about Saber's performances with your version 3 or version 2 5-star teammates, and you can eventually vertically invest in her other 5-star upgrades as you play this game further and further, right? Now keep in mind, for this RMC team and category, I did opt for the attack percentage boost because action value would mainly be gotten from RMC herself, so do keep that into mind. And then outside from the 4-star teams, you can either path towards a full version 2 for the older players who wish to still see their version 3 teams with version 3 support, or you can go for the full version 3 upgrade with 3B, RMC, and Hyacinth. Or if you really want to, you can also mix between version 2 and version 3 as long as there's someone that can spam the ultimates or buff Saber's action value. For the pure version 2 team, I would say that Robin, Sunday, and Ho-Ho, they were very smooth, essentially played the same way as any other DPS, which made use of the action value advance as well as the energy regeneration from Sunday. For 3B, Sunday, and Hyacinth, it played very similarly to Sunday providing his usual buffs, and 3B and Hyacinth themselves also has a very decent damage output amongst the two of them. 3B herself also has an exceptional ultimate uptime, which helps Sabers charge her core resistance even more, although you need to manage your skill points a little bit because Hyacinth definitely cannot scale every single team. For RMC specifically, if you're going to be running this with any team running RMC without Sunday, attack boost was much stronger than speed boost from what I've tried, gaining no additional action for the plus 25 speed and purely relying on RMC's 100% charge to give Saber the highest damage possible with the 43.2% attack, right? A slower Saber can actually lead to a less skill point pressure, which allows the rest of the team to charge their ultimates and in turn boost Saber's core resistance. Without RMC or Sparkle as a replacement, speed boost would be advised with or without Sunday, since Saber do need the action value to get herself going, either being +1 to Bronya or from the team-wide buffers like 3B as well as Runmei. Alright, so with that, we have come to the end of Saber's early access guide. Unfortunately, this is not going to be available before actual launch, so I will be seeing you guys on the live server itself. Let me know what you guys think of the performances below, as I'm going to be trying out even more on all of my streams in future platforms. Word of the day is going to be X. Join to, use code of 10% off all the best with the boost. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.